Welcome, lovely viewers, to another exciting video. Welcome to another exciting video, where we'll be shedding light on Zheng Manuo. Zheng Manuo 25 May 163,326 May 1673 was the first Chinese international student in Europe and the first Chinese Jesuit priest. At the age of 12, Zheng left Macau with the French priest Alexandre de Rhodes in 1645 and reached Rome in 1650. Zheng studied first at the novitiate of Sant'Andrea in Rome. He then studied and taught at the Roman College from 1653 to 1660. Afterwards, he studied theology at the University of Bologna and completed his studies at the University of Coimbra in Portugal in 1665, by which time he had also been ordained. After Zheng left Europe in 1666, he worked as a missionary in India until 1668, when he was sent back to Macau due to the need of Chinese priests in China under the anti-Christian edict. In Macau, he studied a year of Chinese language. He then evangelized in southern China from 1669 to 1671. When the anti-Christian edict was lifted, Zheng accompanied 2 foreign missionaries to Beijing. He contracted tuberculosis and died in the imperial capital in 1673 at the age of 40. Zheng was buried at Zheng Cemetery with other foreign missionaries. His tombstone, which contained Chinese and Latin inscriptions, was lost during the Cultural Revolution. With our foundation established, it's time to explore in Western languages and its relevance to our overarching theme. Zheng's Portuguese given name is Manuel. His Chinese given name Manuo is derived from it. Some historians put his given name as Emmanuel, but other historians acknowledge both usages. On the other hand, various sources give Zheng's Portuguese last name differently across several languages. Alexandre de Rhodes, the mentor of Zheng, called him Emmanuel de Siqueira in the Italian manuscript of his journal. Francis A. Rouleau claimed Zheng's last name is de Siqueira from different records and Zheng's own signature. He further claimed that the name Siqueira passed down from Zheng's Latin tombstone inscription. In his 1988 book Biographies of Figures in Chinese Catholic History, Fang Hao called Zheng Manuo de Siqueira. Nevertheless, Fang also cited several registries that use Emmanuel de Siqueira in his book. Our focus now turns to in Chinese, an important aspect of our discussion. Zheng's Chinese name is Zheng Manuo. However, there is not a consensus on his Chinese courtesy name. Some sources put it as, while others put it as. In his 2022 book The Chinese Vogue in Europe during the 18th century, Zhu Minglong claimed that Zheng's original name was Yin. There exist different romanizations of Zheng's Chinese names. Rouleau put Zheng's last name as Cheng, his given name as Manuo, and his courtesy name as Wei Xin. George H. Dunn calls Zheng Chong Wei Xin in a 1961 article. Now, we shift our focus to early life, a topic that deserves our attention. Zheng was born on 25 May 1633 in Macau. His father, Anthony, was a Chinese Catholic who was close with the Jesuit priest Alexandre de Rhodes. Zheng was baptized by de Rhodes. Alexandre de Rhodes intended to travel to Europe to introduce the region of Vietnam to the Holy See. At the time, Jesuit missionaries from Japan were spreading Catholicism in the region. In 1645, de Rhodes suggested to the Jesuit superior at Macau that he could take children from China and Vietnam to study in Rome. The priest chose 3 boys, including Zheng from China, a boy from Tonkin and another boy from Cochinchina. Because the society had financial difficulties, the local superior only agreed to let de Rhodes depart with Zheng. Zheng's father gave consent to the arrangement. Rouleau asserted that de Rhodes almost certainly hoped to nourish a comprehensive program for the indigenation for the Annamite and South China missions when he was selecting a candidate for the European studies. In his journals describing the trip, de Rhodes often referred to Zheng as my little Chinese. He also praised Zheng, saying that the boy was of very good nature and marvelous spirit. As we venture forward, let's take a closer look at Journey from Macau to Rome and its impact on our understanding. Journey from Macau to Rome. Alexandre de Rhodes and Zheng departed Macau on 20 December 1645. Zheng was 12 years old when he left. On 14 January 1646, the two reached Malacca. They were then captured by Dutch pirates and sent to Jakarta. After 3 months, they were released and landed at Goa. They then reached Hormuz on 1 March 1648 and began to travel on land. They journeyed through Persia and Armenia and arrived in Yerevan on 1 September 1648. According to de Rhodes, a group of Turkish people on the way thought Zheng as a Tatar Muslim and planned to abduct the boy as soon as he enters the Ottoman Empire. Thus, de Rhodes placed Zheng at a Dominican monastery in Armenia. Zheng stayed there for 6 months and learned the Armenian language. He later entered Turkey, went through Izmir and reached Rome by the Mediterranean. He reunited with de Rhodes at the city in early 1650. Brace yourself for an in-depth analysis as we navigate through studies in Rome and its far-reaching implications. Studies in Rome. Zheng was the first Chinese person to study abroad in Europe. On 17 October 1651, he entered the novitiate of Sant'Andrea in Rome. He was 18 years old at the time, and he only brought a few pieces of personal clothing. He studied under Domenico Vanni, the rector of the novitiate, and completed his noviceship in 1653. In autumn 1653, Zheng made his Jesuit first vows and entered the Roman college. He first studied rhetorics from 1653 to 1654. He continued to study 3 years of philosophy, spending a year each on logic, natural theology, and metaphysics. Then, as a part of his regency, a period of teaching as a part of the Jesuit formation, he taught classics for 3 years at the Roman college. Rouleau observed that it was unusual for Zheng, a Chinese, to teach classics to Europeans. He suggested that Zheng's teaching position implied both that Zheng had completed his education successfully and that the college superiors did not make any exceptions for Zheng as a foreign candidate. Yuan Gui also said that it was unprecedented for a Chinese person to teach classics in Rome. Zheng completed his teaching in 1660. Get ready for an exciting exploration as we unravel the mysteries of studies in Bologna and Coimbra, ordination. Studies in Bologna and Coimbra, ordination. By Jesuit formation, Zheng was to study 4 years of theology. From 1660 to 61, the 27-year-old Zheng studied the subject at the University of Bologna. Zheng's transfer from Rome to Bologna indicated that he had word of a probable imminent departure for the Orient. According to Rouleau, for Bologna was closer to the transit services and would be more convenient for Zheng to leave promptly. In September 1661, however, Zheng left for Portugal. According to Rouleau, his departure was likely because he was recruited by the Jesuit procurator of the province of Japan. Zheng first reached Genoa in October, but his movement afterwards was unknown. Rouleau supposed that Zheng postponed a year of his studies in order to travel to Portugal. Zheng completed his studies in theology at the University of Coimbra in 1665. Then, along with Marini's team, he departed Europe from Lisbon in spring 1666. A 1665 registry shows that Zheng had been ordained to priesthood and was destined to become a missionary in China. However, the exact date of his ordination is not clear. According to Rouleau, Zheng was likely ordained in 1663 in his second year of theology, and very likely had become a priest by the end of 1664. According to Dunn, Zheng was ordained in 1664. Zheng was the first Chinese Jesuit priest. Let's now zoom in on travels and mission and uncover the hidden gems that lie within. On 7 April 1666, Marini and his team boarded their ship in Lisbon to prepare to travel to the east. The team consisted of 1 Belgian priest, 6 Italian priests including 4 Portuguese priests including Thomas Pereira, a young Chinese man named Nicolas da Fonseca, and Zheng himself. They were part of the fleet of the newly appointed Portuguese Viceroy of the Indies, which departed on 13 April 1666. When the fleet was near Guinea, A fever broke out, and 2 of the priests died. The fleet reached Goa on 13 October 1666. With our foundation established, it's time to explore mission in India and its relevance to our overarching theme. Mission in India. In Goa, the local Jesuit superiors ordered Zheng to stay in India, contrary to his wishes to return to China. Zheng was dissatisfied with the decision. In a letter to the Society's Superior General, Giovanni Paolo Oliva, he complained that he had to learn the local language to serve in the province for no reason. The actual reason for Zheng's stay in India was that proscribed Christianity in the country, and almost all missionaries in China were left in Guangzhou. At the time, Macau was also suffering from an economic blockade hygiene since 1661. Zheng was thus assigned to Chul, where there were a church and a Jesuit college. Around this period, Luo Wenzi, a Chinese priest, managed to evade the sanctions on foreign missionaries and traveled around China to visit the Christian congregations. The Jesuit visitor at Macau, Luis da Goma, was aware of Lu's achievement. He immediately summoned Zheng to Macau. In a 1668 letter to Oliva, da Goma explained his decision. In the next segment, we'll be exploring the studies in Macau and its implications for our subject matter. Studies in Macau. Zheng left Goa with fellow Jesuits on 14 May 1668. 2 months later, they reached Malacca, which was under Dutch control. They stayed at the port for 9 days. According to Zheng's account, he met with many local Catholics, who were restricted by the Dutch Calvinist rule at the time. He acknowledged that the local believers had a great need of priests. Nevertheless, the priests sailed for Macau and arrived there on 19 August 1668. Upon his return, Zheng first began to study the Chinese language at St. Paul's College, Macau, to prepare for his mission in China. Luo observed that it had been scarcely possible for Zheng to retain his knowledge in Chinese during his years in Europe. The Jesuit priest Prospero in Torcetta, who escaped from Guangzhou to Macau in July 1668, also briefed Zheng about the situation of Christianity in China. Fang noted that in Torcetta and Zheng communicated extensively during this period. Let's now venture into the realm of support for native clergy in China and explore the fascinating intricacies it holds. During the Chinese rites controversy in the 17th centuries, different Catholic groups debated on the acceptance of Chinese rituals performed to honor ancestors. According to Paul Rule, the issue of Chinese clergy members is not strictly a part of the controversy, but attitudes taken towards it serve as a kind of litmus test of attitudes towards Chinese rituals and culture. In Torcetta, in particular, supported the idea of introducing members of the Chinese literati as priests. Zheng, following this idea, wrote a letter to the Superior General urging the Jesuit superiors to recruit Chinese priests. A part of the letter reads, "In Torcetta carried this letter, along with many reports and letters, when he departed Macau on 21 January 1669. Let's now shift gears and explore mission in China through a critical lens, uncovering its strengths and weaknesses. Mission in China. After studying Chinese for 1 year in Macau, Zheng was sent to Guangzhou in 1669. Luis da Goma planned that Zheng would either travel around China like Luo Wenzi, or he would focus on southern China. Zheng was assigned to the latter option. Luo suggested 2 reasons why Zheng was assigned to southern China. The Jesuit province of Japan and Macau wanted to prioritize its own missions, and Zheng might begin to develop tuberculosis, which would prohibit him to travel around China like Luo. From 1669 to 1671, Zheng evangelized mainly in Guangdong, but he also traveled to Hainan and Guangxi. In 1669, he and other Jesuit priests of the Japan province baptized 500 children in Guangzhou. In 1670, they converted 150 more people. During his time in Guangzhou, he relied on the assistance of Cai Andu, a Christian from Macau. In 1671, the Kangxi Emperor issued a new imperial edict that allowed the foreign missionaries to return to their provinces. On 9 March 1671, the news arrived in Guangzhou, where the foreign missionaries were detained. The emperor also ordered the governor of Guangdong to send 2 foreigners excelling in applied sciences to Beijing. The governor chose Claudio Filippo Grimaldi and Christian Hertrich. Zheng was appointed to be a Chinese gentleman's secretary to the 2 foreign priests. Regarding Zheng's role, Xie Jiawen claimed that it is improper to identify him merely as a gentry assistant due to his education and missionary work in China, as well as his status as a Jesuit priest. Rhodes suggested that Zheng was sent to Beijing not only because he could administer to the Christians there, but also because the dry, northern weather would help with his tuberculosis. Along with other foreign missionaries, the 3 left from Guangzhou on 8 September 1671. However, when the waterway they were traveling on froze over that winter, they had to abandon their vessel and walk on land. Zheng's health deteriorated throughout the journey and had to be left behind for several months. He reached Beijing alone in 1672. According to Gabriel de Magalhaes, the Beijing priests met Zheng and confirmed that he had tuberculosis. A 1672 report by Adrian Grellin mentioned that he lived incognito. Rouault interpreted that Zheng did not present himself to the imperial court, but remained in obscurity and attended to the local Catholic community while affected by the disease. Our focus now turns to death and legacy, an important aspect of our discussion. Zheng died of tuberculosis in Beijing on 26 May 1673, a day after his 40th birthday. He was buried outside of Fuching Gate in Zelen Cemetery, a Jesuit cemetery first acquired to bury Matteo Ricci. His tomb was next to the tomb of Niccolo Longobardo. On 19 September 1673, Gabriel de Magalhaes wrote to Jacques Lefort about the Jesuit mission in Beijing. He called Zheng a true honor, glory, and prodigy of his people. In the letter, he also called for fostering Chinese priests to carry on Zheng's legacy. A 1708 correspondence between Gian Paolo Gozzini, a visitor of the order, and Michelangelo Tamburini, the Jesuit general in Rome, mentioned that some Christians in Beijing developed a devotion of piety towards Ancien Faber and Zheng. Rouault suggested that Zheng impressed the Beijing Christians even though he only lived for a few months in the city. In 1958, the Catholic Patriotic Association donated Zelen Cemetery and the attached chapel to the Beijing Municipal Party Committee School. During the Cultural Revolution, the school was converted into a hostel in 1973, and Zelen Cemetery was destroyed. It was rebuilt in 1984, but Zheng's tombstone was not recovered. Only its rubbing survived. Get ready for a captivating exploration as we unravel the layers of tombstone and their profound significance. The middle of the tombstone says Tomb of Father Zheng, Society of Jesus. On the right side, there is a Chinese inscription. On the left side, there is a Latin inscription. The Chinese inscription reads. The Latin inscription reads. Contrary to the inscriptions, which state that Zheng lived for 38 years, most historians agree that Zheng lived for 40 years. Fang calculated that Zheng lived for 40 years and 1 day. Rouault also confirmed that Zheng died 40 years old. As we progress, let's zoom in on early Chinese students abroad and examine its role in shaping our overall narrative. Michael Shen Futsung, 17th century Chinese student in Europe, and Jesuit priest Arcadio Huang, Chinese scholar in Europe during the early 18th century. Louis Fan, Chinese student in Europe during the early 18th century and Catholic priest, also buried at Zelen Cemetery. Turning our focus to Chinese Jesuits, let's explore its key elements. Hishan Hang, another Chinese Jesuit from Macau. Wuli, Chinese Jesuit, and painter Ignatius Kang Pin Mei, 20th Chinese Jesuit, Bishop of Shanghai. In the upcoming section, we'll be dissecting books and exploring its intricate connections to our topic. Kakari births, Kakari deaths, Kakari Jesuit missionaries in China, Kakari 8th century Macau people, Kakari Pontifical Gregorian University alumni, Kakari University of Bologna alumni, Kakari University of Coimbra alumni, Kakari Macau Jesuits. I hope you learned something new today. Let me know what you found most interesting in the comments below.